Today's arrangement is looking at an asymmetrical design, but in a bit more of a modern or contemporary style. So good afternoon and welcome back to today's video. Now we're going to look today at an asymmetrical design. So that's one that's longer on one side than the other. I've got a minimal choice of flowers. It is florist grade flowers and maybe things that you won't get hold of in the supermarket, but it's something quite exciting for you to look at. Now my container today is this really lightweight wooden base. It's worked really well for floral demonstrations I often do for flower clubs and gardening clubs and that type of thing. And I thought it would be a really good design to go with today's choice of flowers. Now the container is obviously made of wood, so there's a possibility that when the floral foam leaks, it's going to run onto the container and you will see a little bit of water damage already on the base. But I don't mind that because I think it adds a bit to the character. But what I'm going to do with my floral foam for this design is use it inside a plastic drinking cup. So that now will act as a waterproof layer and hopefully prevent too much of the water leaking out on my container. You might be able to see a little bit of glue there on the top, and that's because sometimes I glue a plastic base. But I thought for today that was going to work quite well. There is probably going to be a bit of overspill of water, but hopefully not too much to spoil the effect. And I'm just going to take off a little bit of the greenery, oh it's not greenery, a little bit of the foam from the top so that I don't have quite so much to cover as I progress through the arrangement. Now from the garden, I have some dried palms. They don't come from my garden, but I do get donated them from my next door neighbour. And this originally would have been a very large Washingtonian palm in green. And when they start to die off, the bottom leaves start to look a little bit sad. And I quite often go home at the end of the day and I find some at the top of my drive. So what I've done is I've removed the uglier parts of the fronds, the end part of the palm that were looking a bit tired. And I've ended up with these unusual sort of shaped dried material that I can use. The colour link there is just amazing. So I've got 3 of those. This one you might be familiar with and I've possibly used it before. This is a Strelitzia. It's the leaf off the Strelitzia. When I buy them in, they're green, spear shaped, and as they dry off they turn into these amazing exciting shapes. So I've got 2 of those to work with, and then my flower of choice, I think it's going to be the only flower that I'm going to be working with, is a spider Gerbera. So if you haven't seen these before, they're a raggedy sort of edged Gerbera, and they have got a little bit of curve in the stem. They haven't been conditioned, so I've made them perfectly straight. I've allowed them to get a bit of personality and a bit of curve because I thought it was going to work quite well against the very rigid palms that I've got. So it gives us a little bit of rhythmic movement in the design. I was going to say that was all I've got, but that would be lying. I've also got some Craspedia. So if you haven't seen these before, this is a plant that will grow quite happily in the garden, but I buy them in commercially. So little yellow circles, spears on the top of a long straight stem. And for those of you that have got poppies in your garden, you'll probably recognise the poppy seed head. This time of the year our poppies are starting to die away and you're left with a seed head that works really well in floral designs. So don't get rid of it. Not only have we got seed heads in there, but you can use them in your floral designs. And if I'm buying them from the wholesalers, they do cost quite a lot of money. So it's a good one to have. As well as the longer Gerbera, I have got a few slightly shorter ones that I've used in the previous design, but would look quite nice on the top section there. So what we're going to do is go slightly off to one side and just looking to see which is the nicer front of my container. I'm going to go off in that asymmetrical style, starting I think with my Craspedia. And for my width, I'm going to go about the same height as my container. So that's a little bit large, too long, and my flowers are going to drag on the floor and the design is going to be a bit out of proportion, and too short and my container is going to be more dominant than my flowers. So I think that's roughly the length. And I want to start further back in my foam. I placed that one a little bit too close to the front. And then I'm going to bring this sort of staggered line of the same colour and texture towards the front, or what will be my focal point. So towards this area here. And I'm doing this backwards today just so that you can appreciate the shape and hopefully see how it's coming together. I'm going to go slightly longer only because this one here has a bit of a smaller head and he would work better on the outside than he would closer to the centre. So try and start small and get bigger and bigger as you come towards the middle. And what I'm doing now is creating that asymmetrical look, so that unbalanced design, which is going to be counterbalanced by the heavier greenery or my dried leaves here on one side. Right, so let's get in with those positions. This one has already been cut short because they are quite tough, but I now need to go a bit shorter. So I'm going to rely on the trusty secateurs. When they dry, they are really quite tough to work with, but this is going to give me that counterbalance. So this shorter section here is roughly half of the longer side. So to get that shorter and longer side, you're looking to halve this length to get the shorter side over there. And hopefully that will work quite well to give you good proportions. All right, I got two more to get in. So this one I've angled slightly towards the back. If you remember, that's going to give you some depth to the arrangement. And then this slightly smaller one that I've got here can come more towards the front of my arrangement so that we have a little bit of variation in the positions. It's far more interesting if they're set in different planes, if they're angled in slightly different places. It prevents that design becoming really quite flat. Now I'm going to slide this over to that side, otherwise I'm going to be hidden behind those great big palms. And then with these really interesting pieces, the twistier sort of pieces, I'm going to feed them in towards the front. So we get a bit of a contrast in the shape. We get some space opening up in the arrangement, a softer curve alongside those very visually heavy pieces of the dried palm. And with the dried palm, they can be spray painted, you can hand paint them if you want to, but they look really great at different times of the year in different colours. So once you've got them and once you've dried them, and they dry really easily, just leave them somewhere where there's plenty of air circulating, and you'll get this biscuity sort of shade from them. Before I add my flowers, I'm going to hide the back part of my foam, and for that I'm going to use just small pieces of the pistache greenery, and this one is that very economical foliage that we tend to use as florists, but this can be anything that you can get hold of. At the back I'm only using it for its ability to cover my foam, cover that little plastic glass that I've used. Plastic glass, that didn't make any sense at all. Cover that plastic cup. That was the word I was looking for. And it's going to neaten off the back area, stop my foam from drying out. And when I'm in this position here, you can appreciate what's going on in the front. Just one or two more pieces. Very neatly finished off quite quickly, but you're looking to do the same with the back of your design. It doesn't matter if you've got flowers available. Could be a large hydrangea head, it could be moss, could be any type of foliage, camellia, conifer, ruscus, eucalyptus. I would suggest you use your less interesting foliage rather than your expensive shop bought greenery. So that's my sort of outline shape starting to take place to give me a bit more interest and contrast. On the longer side, I'm going to introduce the poppy seed heads. Oops, I didn't want to do that. And this time I'm going to bring that visual line that I started with the Craspedia a little bit closer to the center of my design. So we've almost got a really interesting line effect taking place on one side, and then we're going to have a more massed section towards the middle. So could I call this a line mass arrangement? I possibly could. So two different textures. The darker bits of my poppy heads pick up on the darker pieces of my wood. And now I'm going to start putting in those Gerbera. I'm just going to angle this sideways. I've had a couple of comments that I hide the design when I'm making it because obviously I'm looking at it. So we'll position it sideways for a moment and we'll see if that makes any difference to how much of the design you can see. So I've started now right on the edge. There's a little bit of movement with the stems of my Gerbera because they're not perfectly straight, and it gives me a bit of contrast against the straightness and the rigid stem of the poppies and the Craspedia. And I'm going to stagger that orange colour all the way through towards the centre. Just get my longer stems. So if you haven't got Gerbera like me, think of a single flower. It could be a rose, it could be a carnation, could be peonies even. But a single flower on a single stem works much better than very fussy flowers like spray carnations or spray roses or anything like an alstroemeria. Something that's fairly big, fairly bold, and something that's going to give a real visual impact. Now the reason I'm swapping the Gerbera, if you notice then, I just cut one of the Gerberas out. And that's because the head is quite small and the head of this Gerbera is a little bit bigger. And now I'm having a bit of difficulty working into its position. Now I could wire these Gerbera to give me a bit of extra support, but the reason I didn't wire them was because I want the quirkiness, I want the bends in the stem. I don't want everything to be really rigid, perfectly straight. Now then, let's keep working these Gerberas towards the front. I'm not too worried about the floral foam and the plastic container because I can hide that with greenery as we come to the end. I'm just going to keep working in the Gerbera quite close and quite controlled so that they're almost sitting on top of the foam. And then we go from that quite soft floaty effect on the end of the Gerbera to a much more solid structure towards the middle. Just two Gerberas to go in the middle there, and then I'm going to finish off with greenery. And if you've got two sets of flowers, maybe you might have an orange rose or a yellow rose or something that gives a really vibrant contrast, then you can add those towards the center as well. But today I'm just going to use the single Gerbera, and hopefully that gives you a really striking design there with that splash of orange color coming right from the end towards the center to give you a bigger concentration of colour towards the middle. Now I'm going to fill in the middle with some more of the pistache. This is going to help create a link from the back to the front. It's a soft greenery, so it's going to really show off those big Gerberas there in the centre. I want my Gerberas to be pride of place and not to be hidden too much by any other fussy flowers. So we'll tuck that greenery in, a few more pieces, and then I'm going to be almost finished. And if that darker greenery now really makes that orange pop out and emphasises the shape and the colour and that lovely texture. And then just to finish off, I'm going to keep going there, tuck in some more of the pistache greenery. Could be eucalyptus, could be euonymus, you might have hebe in your garden, could quite easily be conifer. Just something that's not going to be too busy and too fussy and spoil the look of the single Gerbera. I need to tuck a few bits underneath to make sure my plastic cup and the foam is covered there. Just a few pieces there tucked in at the front, and I think I'm done. I'm going to take a little step back and have a look how that's come together. Slightly remove a bit of greenery there that's hiding my Gerbera. And what I am going to do is move this Strelitzia leaf that's at the back here, because it's blending in a bit too much with the leaves at the back. So what I'm going to do is bring it out and angle it more towards the side in that sort of position there, because now you can see it more clearly and it gives a bit more of a feature to the arrangement. Now the idea with this arrangement is that you start really soft with the line material and your eye is drawn up to the massed concentration of flowers there in the centre. So an asymmetrical design, I've probably done a few of these on the channel before, but this will give you a more modern approach to it. If you're considering making a more modern or contemporary style arrangement, then use minimal flowers. Try and pick bold colour combinations or clashing colour combinations, and don't overfill and overclutter the design. So I hope you've enjoyed that tutorial. As ever, please subscribe to the channel to help other people find us. And if you want to be notified every time I upload a new video, then hit the notification bell. As ever, thank you very much for watching. I do really appreciate the fact that you come back time and time again to watch the videos. I look forward to seeing you for the next one, and goodbye for now.